Everybody, and welcome to day 2 of our Kasten Kickstart. Yesterday we installed our Rocky Linux VM. So we have our Rocky Linux VM running, working, and ready now to install Kubernetes. Now I'm going to install K3s. It's a lightweight Kubernetes distribution. It's often used in edge cases. And on top of that, we're going to add some storage, Longhorn storage, which allows us to snapshot. Snapshotting is important in Kubernetes because using CSI snapshots, you can then export those as backups. And that's what Kasten does. So no more talking. Let's get right to action. This is really fun and really simple, okay? No difficulty at all. So first of all, we're going to install K3s. And this is ridiculously simple. We're going to use a curl command to download right from the K3s site our K3s. So I've got the command right here. Now, what you will see with this command is that we have the curl and then go get K3s, and then we're piping it into shell, but we're disabling local storage. And that's because K3s comes with its own local path storage, but you can't snapshot it. So we don't want to do that. And I should probably show my screen. That would help you see. Otherwise, you're looking at me and going, well, that's wonderful, Jeff. We can't see a thing. There we are. Okay, there's my screen. So curl command, and we're disabling local storage. We'll push that off. It goes off and will download from the site. Now I had to, before this, I did some sudo commands, and so it didn't ask for it. But if I just done this command right away, it would have said, hey, I need to escalate privileges to install this, and I would have put in my password, and using sudo, it would have installed it. Did install it because I used sudo before. You know that if you use sudo for a little short time period, and I don't know where that is, but somewhere in the settings, you don't have to retype in your password because it's got it there. Okay, so it's downloaded, and it's done. That's it. It is now installed. Pretty quick, huh? However, in order to access this from the command line and see my Kubernetes distribution, I need to do a couple more things. So first of all, the way you access this is with a certificate, and then using the user with cluster admin privileges. It's all done behind the scenes. However, K3s puts this in the etc folder, and we want to copy that locally, okay, just for convenience. So I'm going to make a local folder called cube. So it's in my local directory. I'm the Kasten user, and this is cube. And now I'm going to go and copy that file from etc where K3s has put it. So it's etc, and I put the command in would help. etc, and then it's Rancher. Rancher, by the way, is also another Kubernetes distribution, and it also owns K3s. But I didn't want to use Rancher. It's pretty heavy. It's got a UI and all that, but we don't want that. But that's the folder that's created. And then it's in here, that YAML file. And we're going to copy that into our cube directory, okay? But we're going to call this config. So there we go, it's been copied. Now we've copied it using sudo, which means that it's owned by root. And we don't want that because our user can't access it. So if I now try to do kubectl get nodes to see my nodes of my installation, boom. And it's because it's first of all trying to go to the other location by default, which I don't want, and I'll tell you why in a bit. But also it can't copy the local one. It can't get to the local one either because it doesn't have the permission. So first of all, we have to change the owner of that local file. So we're going to use sudo and own, which is, of course, change owner. And my username is Kasten. Kasten is going to be the owner and the group. And it's going to be cube and then config. Okay, so that's now been changed. However, it still won't work because it's looking in the wrong location, see? So we want to change that by telling our environment that no, we want it to look at this local location. And the reason I'm doing, I'll tell you right now, is I'm going to use Helm after this to install Longhorn storage, and Helm's going to look there as well. So in my local.cube. So I don't want to fiddle, might as well copy this, it'll be fine. All right, so what do we need to do? Well, we need to copy the environment to create the environment variable so it knows where to look. So generally that's an export command, and I'll do export, and this is what it's going to look for. Kube config. It's the kube config file it's looking for, even though we called it config. Don't ask me, but that's the way they did it. And it is located in my home Kasten and then .cube folder, and it's the config. Okay, so I'll export that. Also want to copy that, by the way. If we're successful, we'll test it now, to my .bashrc file, because when I log in, I'm using bash. Okay, that's my shell. It reads bashrc and loads all those variables. And so this is one thing we want to load on top of some shortcuts, which we'll also do in a second. So let's test that right off the bat. Let's go back. There we go. kubectl, get nodes, and look at that. We've got our node there. It's ready. So we want to just copy that. Now, little trick here, you can just highlight that. Okay. Right click, and now we'll go into our bashrc file. Okay. It's not a huge file, but it's relatively big. In fact, it's very small in Rocky Linux. So in Ubuntu, this is a huge file. Oh, it's huge. It's got a lot in there. So this is quite interesting. Where should we put it? Well, let's put it here. Let's put it here. We'll just put it at the end of this. This could be another discovery of differences. Put it in there, and we'll try that. And then what you can do to kick it into shape right away is do exe bash bash. Okay, and so that's like reloading bash, and it should work. Okay, so our kubectl works. Great, we'll do it again. Let's get pods. There should be no pods there. We'll get namespaces, okay? And they're all in namespaces. So that's working, that's great. Okay, but do I want to type kubectl each time? No, I'm pretty lazy. So I want to add a few things. First of all, I want to use some aliases. So I want to use K instead of kubectl, because then I just type K every time. I also want auto completion, because let's say I'm looking for a namespace, and I can do K get namespace, or get pods in namespace, and it's a long namespace name. I don't know, it's Jeff Burke's namespace. Well, I don't want to type Jeff. So if I use auto completion, it'll auto complete that. So we want to add that as well. So we're going to do that. And what I always do, I never memorize this stuff by heart. There is a location called the it used to be called the Kubernetes kubectl cheat sheet. So I can't even say cheat. That's because I never do it, right? So it used to be called the cheat sheet, but someone obviously thought that was not politically correct, and they've changed to quick reference. But for some reason, just so many years typing cheat sheet. So now it's called quick reference. Very, family quick reference. And all you have to do is go in here. You've got autocomplete. You've got how to create an alias. So let's set this up first. You can just copy this from here and all the baloney too. It doesn't really matter. And then go back to your shell, which we should have right here, and then push that in there. That'll put the autocomplete in. And for this part, again, we're going to go back to that file, the bashrc file. We should have it in our history right here somewhere. Okay, and we'll add that in here as well. Now this is interesting. As I said, there's nothing in here. In Ubuntu, there's tons. So hopefully this will work. We'll find out. All right, so what are we going to do to get this to kick in right away? We're going to do this exec bash. Okay, let's see what happens. So theoretically now I should be able to type k get nodes, and it worked. Okay, wonderful. So we have the alias now K. I don't have to kill my fingers typing kubectl every time. We've got auto completion we'll probably use later on, and we're going off our local file. Fantastic. We have a single node Kubernetes cluster, as you can see there. So what's our next step? Well, our next step is we want storage, because right now we'll see there's no storage by default. Now in Kubernetes, it uses a concept called storage classes, okay? And they're different classes. And this can be linked also to vendors of hardware, right? So if you're using cloud, for instance, Azure or AWS, they have their own storage classes. Other hardware vendors will have it. We're going to use Longhorn, which is a software-defined one. But first of all, I want to prove to you there are no storage classes. So what's wonderful in Kubernetes is you don't have to type out like storage class every time. If you want to, be my guest. I don't want to. So they have shortcuts as well by default. And storage class is SE. Now, they're intuitive most of the time, but sometimes they're not, and you'll see. But storage class is easy. And as you can see, no resources found. When you see no resources found, that means that storage classes exist. And I'm saying that's important because you can add things into your Kubernetes cluster, like KubeVirt, which we don't have now. And when you add these in, they'll add in operators and they'll add in these extra pieces called custom resource definitions. And all they do essentially is add in extra, let's say, functionality into Kubernetes. So, as an example, if I type right now get VMs, it's going to say error, the server does not have resource type VMs. The Kube API server, which is the brain of Kubernetes, doesn't know what that is. What's a VM? I don't know. But later, well, not today, but in one of our next episodes, I think it's tomorrow, when we install KubeVirt, after we've installed it, that same command will work. And it might just say what we saw now, no resources found, if I haven't installed a VM. That's what I love about Kubernetes. It's like little Lego building blocks. You keep building them. Great. Okay. So the no resources found for storage class means that it understands what a storage class is, but it says, Jeff, guess what? You don't have a storage class. I want a storage class. So let's go about installing a storage class next. Now, one difference with Rocky is that there's no snap in here. So you can use snap in Ubuntu and do like snap install helm -- classic. Long story about that. Not too long, but it's just different. Doesn't have that. Now, Rocky, remember we installed yesterday that EPL release, like that repository? That apparently has Helm in it. So that makes things even easier. So let's attempt to install that. So again, it's a sudo dnf install and Helm. And I said before, Helm is like a package manager for Kubernetes. And sure enough, it's in there. Thank goodness. Okay, let's install it. Helm, very quick. Okay, let's do Helm list. And by the way, we're going to use Helm to install Kasten in one of our episodes coming up in the future. So it's installed now. You can see Helm, name of your whatever you've installed. So whatever I install, it's going to be listed in here. Namespace, revision, update, status chart, app version. Great. Now, why did I do that? Because I would install now Longhorn. So I'll go to my Longhorn instructions. Again, this is very simple. We will install Longhorn. And let's just find it. Okay, one more thing though. By default, remember I was telling you about extra things you add in? So we want to use volume snapshots in Kubernetes. By default, K3s doesn't have it. Neither do a lot of other distributions. Some, though, have it by default. So if you, that's the interesting thing, that you can build like Linux. Linux is a kernel, but then you'll have things like Rocky or distributions like Rocky or Ubuntu. And one of the things they do is they add things in there to make it more convenient, similar to Kubernetes distributions. But if we do right now kubectl, let's do K. Yeah, I'm being lazy. And let's get volume snapshot class. Now, I don't know the shortened version for that one, which is funny, but volume snapshot class doesn't have a resource type volume snapshot class. Why? Because it isn't in the default distribution of K3s. We have to add it. Easy to do. We're going to go to Git. Let's see if Git's installed, first of all. Git's not installed. This is a really fun episode. Nothing's there. So Git in Ubuntu is there by default. It's not in Rocky Linux. So a couple things we're going to do. So first and foremost, let's install Git. So this should be, theoretically, in my humble opinion, sudo dnf install Git. Git's very well known. Yeah. Okay, and it's not in their default. So it's one of those things you learn. It's not in their default. It is now. So Git clone. There we go. Okay. So there's something called the CSI external snapshotter. And this is a piece, say like a piece of software you can install there. One way to look at it, which will give you these volume snapshots. So I always go right to the GitHub. I just type in GitHub and then external snapshotter, just to get the latest version. Okay, external snapshotter, and there it comes. And the GitHub comes up. Okay. And we will just clone that repository. So you don't need to see this, very simple. Well, actually, maybe you need to see that. Let me just pull up one second. Good call. Pull it up in my browser. So here's my browser. So it's GitHub, Kubernetes-CSI external-snapshotter. But again, if you just Google GitHub external snapshotter, you're going to find that. There's not like 10 of them lying around. So there it is. We're going to go here to code. We're going to copy this to the clipboard. We're going to go back to our location and do git clone. Okay, oops, not clong, clone, and it will clone it locally. Okay, and you have to memorize this because every time I go there, just in case there's changes, you want to change directory into that directory. Otherwise, the next commands you do won't work. So I'm in the directory. If you look at the directory, there's a whole bunch of stuff in there. Fine. Let's now install this. So again, if you go down here, don't have to read through all that, but in some point here, they will just give you the simple commands you can run in your Kubernetes cluster, okay? So here we go. We're going to go further down. The first thing we're going to do is install the snapshot and volume group snapshot CRDs. Remember CRD? We just talked about that. Custom resource definitions. These are adding components into your Kubernetes so that you will have these resources. So the next time you type kubectl or k get volume snapshot classes, it's not going to say, I don't know what this is. It's going to say, yeah, here it is. So very simple. We'll do this kubectl command. We're just going to copy it into here. We're going to fire it off. Boom. Look at that. Created. Not done yet. There's another one. We want to install the common snapshot controller. Again, you have to memorize this. Just remember, go to the site, copy the commands. And that's it. Okay, we'll just do that. Go back, and it's created. So now, let's see if it actually knows, if our Kubernetes cluster knows what a volume snapshot is. All right, so we'll go back here. I'm lazy. I don't retype it. I'm going all the way back. There we go. K get volume snapshot class. No resources found. That's fine. We haven't created one yet, but it knows what it is. Very simple. So next step, we're going to install our what? Yes, our storage. Okay, to install our storage, I'm going to install Longhorn. And I'll probably put all these commands later in a post linked to this post so you don't have to pause the video, but you could pause the video. In fact, maybe even easier pause the video because I'm suspicious you're just going to copy and paste. You can copy and paste from the GitHub repository, but these things really it's good to do yourself. So first and foremost with Helm, you have to tell Helm where it's going to look, okay? So it doesn't know about Longhorn yet. It's just a command, Helm. But you need to add the repository. So let's just get out of here, and we'll go back up. Doesn't really make a difference. I could have been in there. And now I'm going to type Helm repo add, okay, Longhorn, and then the chart location. These are called Helm charts, okay? And that's just a fancy name for, you know, the software. But it's actually a chart has all these things that you can do with it. So you can say, okay, disable this, do this, add an ingress. We're not going to go deep into that, but it's called the Helm chart. So I'm going to add the repository. As you can see, it says Longhorn has been added to your repositories. Okay, we've added it to it. One other catch here, you have to add on your local Linux something called Open iSCSI. That's what Longhorn uses. So again, I'm going to assume, never assume, but in this case I'm assuming that this is in DNF because in Ubuntu, you're going to use apt and it's there. So DNF and then install and it's Open iSCSI. Let's just see if that's what it's called in Rocky. If not, we're going to have to Google. Right. It doesn't exist here. So what I'm going to do, let's solve this problem. This is the package name in Ubuntu. So let's type how to install Open iSCSI in Rocky Linux. And I put 9 because, you know, you never know. Older versions might do something different. Okay, and let's see how easy this is. The iSCSI initiator. Okay, that looks promising. Oh, that's a nice photo. I like that. I don't know why they've got that for an iSCSI initiator. So this is the iSCSI initiator. I'm assuming that's the same thing. Target CLI it's called. Interesting. Let's double check that. That seems kind of strange. I think it Open iSCSI. I think it might be that. But let's just double check. I don't want to add all sorts of... The whole point of keeping this lean and mean is not add extra garbage. Okay, so what is interesting is that It's actually called it is called the iSCSI initiator, but it's the initiator utils. And there it is right there. So I was just double checking, and that's what it is. So we're all set. Okay, so let's do that. Always fun using a different operating system, especially with Linux. So it's found that, off it goes, and it's done. So we've done that. Excellent. We're all ready now for Longhorn. Now, for Longhorn, it's very, very simple, but not to complicate things too much, Longhorn by default creates normally 3 replicas for all of the components creating. If you create a PVC, whatever, it's going to create 3 replicas. That's just the way it does it because it's expecting to have a multi-node cluster. Long story short, we don't want that. So we're going to create a values file. A values file with Helm is giving it certain changes to the default Helm chart. So if I just do Helm install Longhorn, it'll just install Longhorn. Okay, great, but it'll install it with the default values. And one of the annoying things about that in this scenario will be that it'll have this replicas 3, and so there'll be a warning all over the place because it's expecting 3 replicas. So we don't want that because we only have 1 node. So we're going to create a values file, and we'll create it here. So I'm going to do v values.yaml. Okay, and these are very simple files. So in this case, all I'm going to do is for the default settings, I'm going to put 1 for replica. Okay. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change that because I might want more values files. In fact, I will for Kasten. So let's change that. Let's change that to Longhorn volume files. And to do that, I'm just going to move it. If you don't know Linux, it's one of the beautiful things. You just move it. You don't rename it, you remove it. And then you do this, and I'll just call it Longhorn underscore values. Oh, voila. Okay, so next we're going to install Longhorn, our storage. Now to do this, we're going to use Helm. We're going to do install, Helm install, okay? And then Longhorn, that's going to be the name of the installation, so to speak. So when I do a Helm list, it'll show me Longhorn. All right, and then what's the chart name? And it's in this case called Longhorn, if I can spell it. Longhorn. Okay, there it is. So / Longhorn. Now, it's going to be in a namespace. Okay, we always try to put things in namespace. It's a great way to organize our applications Kubernetes. We just want them flying all over the place in default namespace because it's the default namespace of all the stuff in it. So we're going to create a namespace called Longhorn, right? Makes sense? Makes sense. No, we're going to call it Longhorn system. For some reason, that's what we want to do. I mean, I guess I could call it anything, but probably better call it what the documentation says because there might be a reason for that. Things are going to look for it and they won't find it. Now, we don't have a namespace called Longhorn system, so we either want to create that or, and by the way, that is a mistake, namespace, there we go. Talking and typing at the same time, I find is quite an interesting thing. So we don't want to, we could create a Longhorn namespace now, empty namespace. That's one way to do it. Or we can add it here, type that. And we're just going to put the create namespace right in here so that it'll create the namespace and then install. So all in one, so to speak. But we want it to use those values, right? Very important. So we're going to use values right here. And then we're going to point to our well, you know, I'm tired of typing. It's the end of the day. I'm just going to copy this, put it there, okay? So what's this command going to do? Helm install. Longhorn is going to be the name of our Helm installation. The chart name is Longhorn. It knows about this because we added the Longhorn repository. If we hadn't added the Longhorn repository, it would have said, I don't know what this is. We're going to create a namespace called Longhorn system. So Longhorn system, create namespace. And we're going to use the value files that we just used, that we created, because we don't want it to create 3 replicas by default. So let's try this and hopefully it'll work. I say hopefully because you never know. Now, you look at the oh my, that was quick, Jeff, fantastic. No, it started off. It's ready to go. It says it's installed, but to make certain it's working, we can do get pods in Longhorn system. I'm gonna have to fix my autocomplete. Let's just see. So that's an interesting thing. In Ubuntu, that works automatically, okay? But here it didn't, so I have to fix that autocomplete. No problems. We'll just type it in for now. So get pods in namespace, Longhorn system. And they're all running. So that was really quick. Wow. All right. So our Longhorn is running. Now let's fix the autocomplete because you can see that didn't work. What should have happened is I should have been able to do K get pods and then N and then start Longhorn and then boom. Okay. But it didn't work. And I think it's probably because Rocky Linux needs auto completion installed. Okay. In Ubuntu, it's there by default. This might be another difference. All right. So I Googled this because I haven't done this in Rocky Linux before. Now, as you can see, it's using the old yum. Okay. Yum. We're using DNF, but I'm assuming, okay, I'm assuming that's this one. There's bash completion. There's bash completion extras too. Let's try bash completion first. I'm going to copy that. And we're going to use our already really well-known DNF. So let's do DNF sudo. Oops, we gotta clear that. Let's clear this. Sudo DNF install. And it's going to be bash completion. We'll do Y so it does it right away. Type in our password again. Boom, there it is. So bash completion wasn't installed. Hopefully that was the issue. So let's try this again. K get ns and long no. So it might be that we need to again reset up the or reinitiate bash probably. Let's try that. Let's clear bash. You might have to relog in. I don't think we have to relog in. So let's try that command again. K get ns and Longhorn. Boom, it worked. Okay. So we encountered a problem that I haven't encountered in Ubuntu, at least in the latest versions of Ubuntu. Auto completion wasn't installed in Rocky by default. So I set everything up for auto completion in Bash and with Kubernetes, and I went to do auto completion and it didn't work, which was annoying because I don't want to type a lot. So now I can happily do K get pods, PO for short. I don't want to write pods, and I don't want to write Longhorn system, so I write LO and it finds it. I am a happy camper. And I'm even more happy because they're all running now. Now remember at first they weren't all running, now they're all running. Okay, so what do you want to do next? Remember we were looking for a storage class. Okay, we were looking for a storage class and there wasn't one. Kubernetes knew about it because it said there's no resources, but we didn't have any. Hopefully now, let's do K get SC. Beautiful, look at that. We have two storage classes. There's Longhorn and Longhorn static. I really don't know the difference, what the difference is. I'll have to Google that at some point or use AI, but Longhorn default is fine. So we now have a Kubernetes cluster running. We have Longhorn running as well, and we're basically all set to go for our next steps. Let's just check one more thing. In fact, I could even show you the UI that is present, and I'll do that in a second. Okay, so there is a front end or a front end pod, which is a UI for Longhorn, which is pretty cool. I mean, you really don't have to go in there that often. Generally, if you have like you're adding disks or something, you can go in there. But let's just go check it out. So it's a service in the Longhorn system. So with your deployments Kubernetes, and this will be the same thing for KubeVirt, you have your pods, you have all that running. The way you access these things is through services. And often these services are in there, but they're only internal in the cluster. The cluster has its own networking, okay? So I can't just go in and take a look at it from outside. And so this command, let's just clear the screen. This command here, if I'm on the screen, K get services. Now, I'm gonna make a mistake now on purpose so you can catch me. K get services, huh? This is Kubernetes cluster IP, there's no services. But I'm looking for the Longhorn service. Looking in the wrong place, looking for love in all the wrong places. Remember that song? I'm looking for Longhorn in all the wrong places because this is the default namespace. Remember, we installed Longhorn in its own namespace. So we want to do K get services, right? Shorten command, SVC or shorten name. I don't want to use the long one. N, auto completion, Longhorn system. And look at that. Okay. So when I just did K get services, I just had one because that's the default namespace, okay? We never want to install things just in the default namespace because we want them to be nicely organized in their own little areas. And also, it's important for backup later on, at least in this version of Kasten. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. Okay, so we go and see services, and there are all these little services, but there's one that's called front end. Front end. Now I'm gonna do a little trick right now, okay? And I'm just doing a one-off. I'm gonna change that service. This is a cluster IP service, which means you can only access it inside of Kubernetes networking. And I'm not, I'm on my laptop, right? I'm on a VM. I'm actually in the VM. I'm gonna change to something called node port. And what that does, it'll expose that service on the VM, so at the VM level, on a specific port, and then I'll be able to see it. Okay, so we'll do that. And do that, I'm gonna edit the service. Keep in mind though, I installed this with Helm. By installing it with Helm, if I ever do an upgrade or anything like that, it's going to reset everything that's not in that values file, or that I have not particularly started set at the install. Okay, so I'll do this change. If I do an upgrade later on, it'll lose the change. Keep that in mind. But this isn't so important. It's a temporary change. So I'm going to k-edit svc. Okay, edit the service where in the Longhorn system. And what's the name of it? Longhorn front end. Well, I don't write that out, so I'll do this. Okay. Auto completion, wonderful, and then front, boom. And there is my service. So all I'm going to do is change the type. So if I do a search here for type, it'll take me right down to where I want to go. Boom, okay? And I'm going to change this from cluster IP, okay, to node port. Okay, and it's like a V, if you know the V editor, WQ to get out of it. All right, now if I look at the services, I now have this as a node port service. Do you see that? And there is a port. So here comes the magic fun moment of the day. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to go to my browser. Okay, my browser. And I'm going to go to that VM. Okay. And what was the VM? HTTP. And it is Kasten K01. And let's put in that port number. Okay. And let's press it. And what do we get? Look at that. Isn't that cool? Okay. So that's what's running inside of that cluster. And all I did was change it temporarily. Now you could make this permanent. You can do all sorts of little things. You can add an ingress, which is like a route into there. Or you can change this, reinstall Longhorn, and make this a node port service. Again, for our purposes, we don't really need it because it's a small install and it's not necessary. Okay. Longhorn. So you got the nodes here. There's my single node. It's all happy. Not very much space. I don't need a lot of space. It's just a demo and ready to go. Okay. So that's pretty wild. If I change back the type, this will not be accessible anymore. So the last thing we want to do is add a volume snapshot class because we now have this all installed. But when you install Longhorn, it doesn't just create a volume snapshot class. You have to add that in there. And it's in the website. So let's go to Longhorn. In fact, I've got it in my notes, but I just want to show you where to search for it. So Longhorn K3s, or just Longhorn. Yeah, K3s. Because if you just leave Longhorn, it takes you some ranch in Texas. So there we go, K3s. There it is, longhorn.io, okay? Again, if you put Longhorn there, you'll get a bunch of like, what are Longhorns? Oh, I guess it's cattle, right? Yeah, cattle. All right. In fact, that's interesting because in Rancher, which is the kind of parent of K3s, the bigger distribution, they have something called cattle. And I can't remember what it is. It's like if you have a bunch of ranchers, they're in the cattle or something. Anyways, here's a website. Let's look at the documentation for the latest. There we go. And what we want is the volume snapshot class. So they'll have this all there. So let's go. Volume snapshot. Okay, create a CIS volume snapshot. Okay, but to do that, you're gonna need a snapshot class. So let's put class in there. Snapshot class. Add a default volume snapshot class. Boom, there it is. They've done it for us. It's all set. Okay, right here. So normally there's a little button here and copy paste. They haven't done that. That's fine. I'll just do this. All right, we will do that. And this is for the CIS snapshot that we're going to want to take. Okay. Okay. So let's go back. Again, we're going to create a file. We're going to call it the Longhorn _ volume snapshot class. I mean, I could have shortened that because this is just the file name, but I want to know what I created. Sometimes I've been kind of lazy creating files, and then I look at it, I go, what the heck is that? At least this way I'll know. And I'm just going to copy this into here. That's fine. So that is a YAML file, right? So I'm going to apply that, okay? Let's just check. Let's do a cat. Let's see if it actually has the namespace. It doesn't have the namespace. I'm wondering, I don't think we need the namespace here. End of the day, I'm a bit tired. No, I think it's just a cluster-wide thing. So let's do K apply. Now I could do K create, but K apply is going to do the same thing. Minus F for the file, right? And the file is volume snapshot class, and off we go. So now if I do a K get volume snapshot class, not only does it know what a volume snapshot is, because we added the external snapshotter, right? We added the custom resource definitions, so it knows what that is. But remember, before it said no resources, I don't have one. Now we've created the volume snapshot class after we installed Longhorn, and now it knows not only what it is, but what we have one. So when we go to do backups with Kasten, we're going to tell Kasten that we want it to use that volume snapshot class. Okay, it's all tied into one long thing, one long chain. So I will probably do a post, but what I'll probably do is wait to the end of this series to do a post on this with all the written details you copy and paste. This will force you to rewatch these and get me like hits on YouTube. Okay, so we've got a lot installed. We've done a great job and we're all set. Let's wait for tomorrow when we go to the next exciting chapter of our kickstarting Kasten on Rocky Linux. Thank you very much.